Hello and welcome to this special program, US Election Watch on NDTV World. I am Ankit Tyagi. These are the top headlines from the United States. Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump says United States is an occupied country. Trump spreads anti-migrant rhetoric in final arguments. Harris and Walz to visit all 7 battleground states in the final week, final outreach to key states ahead of November 5th poll. Chinese hackers target Kamala Harris. Trump campaigns. China hack targeted senior congressional Democrats as well. Virginia asks United States Supreme Court to allow removal of 1,600 voters. Virginia's voter roll purge aimed at suspected non-citizens. Now, with just 8 days to go until the United States elections, the presidential race remains quite a tight affair. A CBS News and YouGov poll shows Kamala Harris leading Donald Trump by 50% to 49%, just a slender margin of 1% among the likely voters, down slightly from a 51% to 48% advantage in mid-October, but still within the margin of error. An ABC News Ipsos poll confirms Harris is ahead, showing her at 51% compared to Donald Trump's 47%. Trump is in Georgia, where he'll attend the National Faith Summit in Atlanta before rallying at Georgia Tech. Meanwhile, both vice presidential nominees, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and Senator J.D. Vance, will be campaigning in critical battleground state of Wisconsin. Meanwhile, with just less than a week to go, former US President and Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump is driving anti-immigration fears in his final arguments in the race to the White House. At a rally at Madison Square Garden, Trump called United States an occupied state, reaffirming his hardline stance on immigration and promised to deporting millions of undocumented immigrants if he wins the 2024 presidential race. Trump's rally also drew a lot of flack after some of Trump's top supporters flung race-based and vulgar rhetoric. Former congressional candidate David Rem called Harris the Antichrist and the devil, while comedian Tommy Hinchcliffe called Puerto Rico a floating island of garbage. Listen in to what Donald Trump had to say on this.
The United States is now an occupied country, but it will soon be an occupied country no longer. Not going to be happening. Not going to be happening. November 5th, 2024, 9 days from now, will be Liberation Day in America. It's going to be Liberation Day.
Joining me at this moment to shed more light on this and discuss this further, Jonah Blank, former advisor to President Biden, National University of Singapore and Rand Corporation. We also have Matt Klink, Republican strategist, and Ajay Sharma, immigration expert, is also joining us at this moment. Just to understand, Mr. Klink, I want to start with you and try and get this in perspective. The immigration problem is not something which is new to people of United States. This has been spoken about time and again, but to take it to a notch of calling United States an occupied country, is Mr. Trump only playing on fears of the voters?
Oh, sir, with all due respect, the Biden and Harris administration has let 10.4 million illegal people into this country through an open southern border. I would add single-age, military-age fighting males from countries all over the world. It is far and above the most extreme illegal immigration problem that our nation has ever experienced since its foundation. And that's why illegal immigration is either a top 1 or a top 2 issue for the United States voters this election. And Trump overwhelmingly has an advantage by, I think he's like plus 15 or almost plus 20. So it's impacted everyone. There's significant murders conducted by people who are in this country illegally. The fentanyl crisis, the Biden administration and the Harris administration admit they have lost. Think about that. They have lost 380,000 children in this country who came here illegally. They're not inflaming fears. They're acknowledging a problem that is 100% created by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
Okay, but Mr. Blank, Kamala Harris has already said that on immigration, the policies of the current administration or the outgoing administration of Mr. Biden is not going to continue. Shouldn't that be taken as an acceptance that there were problems as far as the immigration policy in the current regime is concerned?
Well, immigration is broken in the U.S. Kamala Harris says so, but it's broken primarily because of Donald Trump. The Democrats and the Republicans hammered out an agreement to solve this problem, and it was taken off the table by Donald Trump purely for political reasons. And let's be clear, this is not really an immigration problem that Trump is talking about. It's a racist attack. Donald Trump's grandparents were immigrants. Kamala Harris's parents were immigrants. What is the difference? Donald Trump's grandparents were white, and the rhetoric coming out of Donald Trump and of his supporters is flat out racist, and it makes me embarrassed as an American.
Mr. Kling, that is something also that has come as a criticism of President Trump, that in garb of the immigration policies or his criticism of the immigration policies, his supporters and he himself is raising a lot of racial comments. There is a fear factor which is being created and which also then plays out on the streets of United States.
Well, first of all, you have to make a clear distinction between legal immigration and illegal immigration. 10.4 million people the size of the state of Michigan, coming to this country over the time that the Biden and Harris administration have been in office. That's not racist. That's just a problem. If your country doesn't have secure borders, you don't have a country, and we do not. This is an issue that's impacting all 50 states, and Jonah can cry racism all he wants. The overwhelming majority of American voters, including many Latino voters, believe that illegal immigration is a problem and that people who are in this country illegally should be deported. Stand in line, follow the law, come into our country legally. Don't try to sneak in.
Let me also ask you then a follow-up question. How feasible is Donald Trump's plan to shut down the borders to illegal immigration within the first hour of the day? I mean, is it even feasible to, in fact, go ahead and just do it right with a stroke of a pen?
Well, look, Joe Biden came into office in his first hour. I think it was, 9 or 10 executive orders that he repealed for Donald Trump. So Donald Trump will go back and reinsert the Remain in Mexico policy. He'll do a lot of things to stem the flow. We're certainly not going to have the massive numbers that we've seen under Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. Okay. And ultimately, we'll hopefully get to zero.
Ajay Sharma, I just want to bring you in to try and understand the perspective, because there are a lot of Indians, those who are legally living in United States. Is there a fear factor, and how is it impacting the Indians, those who are living and working in United States?
Well, to be very realistic, I think what Matt said made a lot of sense, that we should distinguish between legal and illegal immigration. I guess what Mr. Trump is talking about primarily is the illegal immigration that's coming in, and that's kind of the key issue. As far as India is concerned, India always gains through legal migration. And if my memory corrects, really serves me right, in the later part of his tenure, last tenure of Mr. Trump, he was very clear that USA should also introduce, as part of the legal immigration, a simple, like in Australia and Canada, for professionals, a good program that brings in legal migrants rather than people who primarily do not serve the systemic requirements of American government, really. So,
Okay.
so overall,
Mr. Blank, right.
overall, this serves the interest of India.
Mr. Blank, let me then ask you this. Instead of, calling what Mr. Trump is saying just as a racist attack, is there an alternate vision, a plan that Kamala Harris has that she will put in place if she's elected to power?
Yes, and in fact, Congress was on the verge of passing it. Not just Democrats, but very conservative Republicans led by Senator Langford of Kansas hammered out an agreement to end the problems that we all have been seeing. It was Donald Trump who told Republicans in Congress not to vote for it because he wanted the issue rather than a solution.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us at this moment and putting forward the point of view of your various parties. Thank you so much. This is an important issue as far as the elections in the United States is concerned. Can it be the deciding factor? We'll know on possibly November 6th. Now, in a shock appearance, Melania Trump joined former President Trump's Madison Square Garden rally in New York City. Former First Lady Melania Trump, who has been largely absent from the campaign of President Trump this election cycle, spoke about declining quality of life and economic instability in the United States. Melania has made very few appearances in 2024 U.S. presidential election campaign for her husband. Her speech and appearance in New York, in fact, rally came as a shocker since she was not in the list of pre-release speakers. Her appearance comes weeks after she broke away from Trump, fiercely supporting women's right to abortion. And as the United States gears up for the 2024 presidential election, a shadow looms large. Election interference is back on the agenda, and the stakes couldn't be higher. From Russia, China, and Iran to domestic threats and allegations against the United Kingdom's Labour Party, it's all going down. Let's examine the internal, external, and surprise threats facing the American democracy.
Just days after the election cycle began, U.S. intelligence and media reports indicate that Russian operatives are already on the move. Recent investigations uncovered coordinated disinformation campaigns targeting social media platforms, echoing Moscow's 2016 and 2020 tactics. These posts seek to exploit societal divisions, race, politics, and public health, creating a landscape of mistrust. Analysts warn that with every like and share, these false narratives could influence vulnerable voters. The latest example of the same was seen as recent as last Friday. Russia allegedly manufactured and spread a fake video that depicts someone destroying ballots marked to former President Donald Trump in Pennsylvania. Meanwhile, China is adopting a different strategy. It is reverting back to one of the oldest tricks in the books, hacking. FBI and other U.S. agencies are investigating unauthorized access to commercial telecommunications infrastructure by subjects associated with China. Republican presidential candidate Trump and his running mate J.D. Vance are reportedly among a number of people inside and outside of government whose phone numbers were targeted by Chinese hackers. Following this revelation, it was reported that phones used by people affiliated with the Harris campaign were also targeted. You see, attempts to infiltrate political organizations and campaigns are means to seek to sway the voters' opinion and create an unequal playing field. The story is eerily similar when one speaks of Iran. Microsoft has pointed out that Iranian government-linked hackers have researched and probed election-related websites in multiple U.S. swing states. An effort to discover vulnerabilities that could be used to influence the presidential election. But it's not just foreign actors. Domestic extremists are also a significant threat. Law enforcement agencies are on high alert for potential violence at polling places and election-related events. Case in point, the 2021 insurrection. January 6, 2021's heavily armed mob attack was an attack not just on the U.S. Capitol building, but also on democracy and the rule of law. Meanwhile, unsuspecting actors are also facing allegations of election interference. Keir Starmer-led UK tops the chart. The Trump campaign has accused Starmer's Labour Party of blatant foreign interference. This after some volunteers traveled to help campaign for Vice Presidential Harris. The Red campaign has filed a complaint with the Federal Election Commission in Washington. It is demanding an investigation into what it has termed apparently illegal contributions from Labour to the Harris campaign. As the 2024 election approaches, the threat of interference, both foreign and domestic, poses a critical challenge to American democracy. The world watches closely as the battle for truth unfolds. Stay informed and stay vigilant. With Arjun Samar Mahendran, Samia Afsar for NDTV World.
Now, with Republican candidate Donald Trump erasing Harris leads in the polls and even leading in a few polls, the U.S. elections was part of nearly every conversation among the finance officials, central bankers, and civil society groups attending the meeting in Washington. Fears are running high with concerns over Trump's potential to upend the global finance system with massive tariff increases, trillions of dollars more in debt issuance, and much more. Trump has vowed to impose a 10% tariff on imports from all countries and 60% duties on imports from China. These would hit supply chains throughout the world, likely triggering retaliation and rising the costs. Now, this is after the IMF also warned that trade tariffs favored by Trump could hurt global growth prospects. To discuss whether these fears are indeed justified, we have with us Jayant Krishna, Senior Fellow, Center for Strategic and International Studies, United States. Thank you so much for joining us here, Jayant. I want to start by asking you, the recent polls have revealed that the voter support to U.S. Vice President's tax and housing policies compared with the Republican nominee. Why is it so, and will it prove to be the deciding factor?
See, Ankit, one doesn't really know which way things happen, but if you look at the business world in the US, there are surely concerns, out of because of many reasons. First is, of course, the political uncertainty, and secondly, some of the big tech companies' earnings are down. If you look at some of the performance, some of the results which have come of Apple or likely to come, McDonald's, Boeing, those performances are clearly down. So that's the risk, and also. That's a concern actually, and also the rising treasury yields. The current rate is being talked about at about 4.25%. So I think that's another big risk. Beyond the political uncertainty. As we all know, Trump has taken a slight lead over Kamala Harris. So I think the major concern the U.S. business has is that if Trump comes to power, he has declared that the import tariffs will go up. Primarily to help the domestic manufacturing in the U.S. so that domestic supplies are preferred over imported ones. But if that happens, it's not that simple. While it may help the domestic manufacturing to a limited extent, right, but it would also result into higher prices. And higher prices would mean, with great difficulty in last 2 years or so, the inflation which has been contained. We all know the Fed's target of 2%. I think if prices go up, especially for the consumer products, inflation is likely to go up too. So I think these are the primary concerns that the business world in the US seems to be having, Ankit.
You're talking about inflation, and Mr. Trump has blamed his successor, big spending on inflation, and vowed a return to an agenda of lower taxes and less regulations. Is this, somewhere enough to try and answer those doubts that people have on Donald Trump?
In politics, in elections, this kind of a blame game is not uncommon. It keeps happening, and almost all over the world, we have seen in our own country and US, everywhere that the government, the earlier government is blamed for lots of things not falling in place. If you look at, Joe Biden, a lot of good things have happened, but obviously there are a lot of areas of concern as well. So it's very easy. It's easier said than done. But if you look at the overall Trump proposals, I have a feeling they will lead to eventually greater government borrowings. And if you have a larger chunk of government, government seeking more borrowings, to augment its resources, it becomes riskier to invest in government securities also. And if the risk with government securities goes up, so it's always, it has been seen that the interest that the investors seek goes up, which is already the yield, the rising the treasury yield is around 4.25%. So it will go up beyond higher interest for most government securities. That's another huge concern that they have right now.
Talk to me about how do you see, if this happens, if Trump administration does come in, the fears that the industries have, how do you see the ripple effect on the global economy of that?
See, if you look at the previous regime of Trump, I think generally he was good for U.S. business. There were other concerns about sustainability issues, about his lack of support to the climate agenda, the Paris Accord, they walked out of it. The U.S. as a country walked out of it. So those are concerns. But by and large, he was reasonably good for business. That's most of his opponents also believe. But today the concern is, in the U.S. business is also about the Federal Reserves. What their next moves are going to be, and there are apprehensions that whether they will maintain the higher rates for a much longer period than what is anticipated as of now. So I think it's not just political uncertainty, but a lot of these factors, pulled in. They have increased the concerns of the U.S. business.
Jayan Krishna, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for speaking to us here on NDTV World. Moving on now, while November 5th is when the United States heads to what is expected to be its tightest election in the recent history, the race is far from over. Watch this report to find out what happens in the race to the White House after November 5th.
On November 5th, every election season, the U.S. air crackles with anticipation. The nation holds its breath, caught in the whirlwind of democracy. Here's what unfolds in this dramatic saga. Polls close and the hush of uncertainty blankets the country. Voters anxiously await results, their fates hanging in a balance. Election workers, fueled by coffee and adrenaline, dive into the monumental task of counting ballots, a process fraught with tension and suspense. As the night deepens, the first waves of results trickle in. States light up on the map, red and blue battles playing out in real time. Twitter explodes, pundits speculate, and hope flickers like a candle in the storm. In battleground states, margins are razor thin, and every vote feels like a heartbeat. Days turn into weeks as the results are certified. Behind the scenes, election officials work tirelessly, verifying votes and ensuring integrity. In contested states, lawyers gear up for potential challenges, ready to navigate the labyrinth of legal disputes. Tension mounts as the clock ticks. Every hour, every minute feels like eternity. Fast forward to December, the appointed electors gather, each one a pivotal piece in the electoral puzzle. With the nation watching, they cast their votes, their decisions shrouded in intrigue. Will they stick to the will of the voters, or will surprises emerge? January 6, 2025 dawns, the day Congress meets to count the electoral votes. The atmosphere is electric, a theater of democracy in action. Politicians clash, tensions rise, and the stakes are sky high. Will the outcome be a smooth transition of power, or will the ghosts of division haunt the Capitol? Finally, the moment arrives. January 20th, 2025 is more than a date, it's a spectacle. The air is thick with emotion as the President-elect and Vice President-elect take their oaths, their voices echoing against the backdrop of history. Cheers and jeers blend into a cacophony of hope, fear, and promise as a new chapter in the American story begins. In this dramatic aftermath, the nation grapples with the implications of the election. It is a reminder that democracy is not just a process, but a vibrant, tumultuous journey filled with possibility. The stage is set and the world watches, captivated by the unfolding drama of the American spirit. An NDTV Bureau Report.
I'll see you later.
And trust NDTV World to get you minute-by-minute 360-degree view of the American election. That's all the time that we have in US Election Watch. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Opt out of politics. Vijay, who has a cult following, makes his political plunge at the peak of his career. He hopes he'll be able to script a new history. In Chennai with Suresh, Sam Daniel, Find the TV.
And that's it on The Last Word. News updates continue right here on NDTV. Do keep watching.
Hello, Moto.
Motorola Edge 50 Pro. World's first AI-powered pro-grade camera.